Hey everyone, welcome to Crushing Classical, redefining a thriving classical music career. I'm Tracy Friedlander, and today on the show I have Lorenzo Brewer, founder of the company nkoda, which he describes as the Spotify of sheet music. nkoda is a subscription-based platform where you can access any sheet music you need in an instant on your digital device. Today, Lorenzo describes the process of building a tech-based music business, what it was like navigating the world of music publishers, and what inspired him to take on such a large endeavor. Whether you're creating an ensemble, concert series, or even your own app like he did, you're sure to hear something of value that Lorenzo offers from his experiences diving into this huge project. But before we get started, I want to thank Fix Music for sponsoring Crushing Classical Podcast. FixMusic.com is the online resource for high-quality, affordable sheet music. There are some offerings at Fix available that you will want to know about. Now there's organ music, a large choral music selection, as well as orchestra parts that you would need for concerts or auditions. And now they are also actively working with choral and orchestra directors to help plan seasons. So if you're a program director and you want some help to choose pieces for your own season, contact Fix Music today through their website. And as always, free shipping on all domestic orders. Check out fixmusic.com for your sheet music needs and use the link in the show notes to receive 10% off your first order. Let's get started. Hey, Lorenzo, how are you?
I'm great, Tracy. How are you?
Great. Thank you for coming on to Crushing Classical. This is Lorenzo Brewer, and I just said his name with an R, but he says it much more eloquently with an English accent. Lorenzo Brewer. You are an entrepreneur, an entrepreneurial. So, a lot of talk in the music world for being an entrepreneurial musician, but you're actually being an entrepreneur. Like you invented something that you're going to sell. And so let's hear that story, your story of being an entrepreneur. What did you invent?
So the company that I founded and I now run is called nkoda, Nkoda, it's how it's spelled. And it's a subscription service for sheet music. So it's like Netflix or Spotify or Apple Music, but for musical materials. So for scores and for parts and for educational materials as well. Mm-hmm. So it's an app. It's available on iOS, on Android, on Windows, and on Mac. So across all your platforms, whichever one is your preference. And you just pay a monthly fee. So in the US, it's $9.99. In Europe, it's €9.99. And you can access everything that's in the library. And the library is 110,000 titles, 30 million pages of music. It's done in partnership with 56 of the major publishers. So this is copyright material, brand new editions, things that are out of copyright as well. And as well as the content, you have all these features. So you can annotate, you can add markings to your scores, you can share those. You can make a library, you can add pieces and parts to playlists and share those as well. So it's a kind of a single access point, a musical community, and a kind of first place for you to go and practice or perform or play.
Great. Okay, so it's like a Spotify for sheet music, essentially.
Yeah, exactly.
So you can search any sheet music. Is there ways to listen to the music as well?
No. So right now, it's the material that you would use to play or to make music. Okay. But part of our product roadmap is to bring in audio and video features a little bit further down the line, and hopefully do some integration with the other services that you might use to listen to music as well. But yeah, exactly. It's kind of like those services, like Spotify, to kind of single place where you can go to do an activity.
That's so incredible.
So in our place for music making. Oh, thank you.
So you're a musician?
Yes. Maybe I'm not anymore, but I was a musician at one point.
Okay, so what was your path? Did you go to music school, or how did this whole idea, like, start from the beginning, like why you even care about getting sheet music into an app? Like, so you started as a musician?
Yeah, so, I mean, I actually don't come from a particularly musical family. My mum played the trumpet when she was younger, but my dad was never really into making music. Okay. But when I was 11 or 12, I was actually in a school assembly, and we'd just moved to London, and I kind of ping-ponged all around the place. I've lived in the US and lived in Italy as a kid as well. And there was one of my classmates, he played a Chopin Nocturne number 15. And it completely changed my life because it was one of those moments, and I don't know if you've ever had it, Tracy, but I'm sure lots of people can relate to this, like where you have some very, very clear understanding that what you've just engaged with is going to be really important for you. And that was the kind of beginning of a kind of obsession with music. And I'm born in 95. So when I was 12 is 2007. In 2008, Spotify became available. And what Spotify allowed me, and I think a whole generation of musicians to do, was just to follow their interests and passion without any limit. So you could start at Chopin and end listening to Stockhausen. And there was nothing in between that you couldn't go through. You could listen to all the pop music and electronic music you loved and do that as well.
I know. I can't imagine having that because I'm much older than you. And so music got doled out based on the era that you lived in, like I heard the 80s music during the 80s and the 90s, and so you got to just explore all of it all at once in one place. So that's a totally different point of view, I think, than, it's actually mind-boggling to think of it in a way.
Yeah, and I think for us, I think one of the really interesting things that you'll find if you talk to people who grew up in, let's say, the streaming era, is that the idea of genre is kind of odd. So the idea that you have sort of classical music and you have electronic music and hip hop or pop or electronic or funk or whatever it is, those were kind of broken down by the presence of those services because they weren't sections in a record store, Oh. It was just something you could go and explore. And so I think you just had music you loved and music you didn't like. And that means that you kind of have one just big and much more open idea about what music can be and how it is that you can experience it. Which was a huge privilege of our generation, right? That we were the first people, like completely by the dint and accident of history, who got to experience this.
Absolutely. And so that's what inspired you, essentially.
Yeah, absolutely. And when I got older, so as I began playing music, and particularly trying to learn to write it, getting a hold of those materials was actually surprisingly hard. And if you aren't in the loop, right? Like if you're not a musician hanging out with other musicians who knows the places that you can go online to find the things, or you don't have a music store near you, or you don't necessarily have the money to spend $20, $30, $40, $50, pounds, euros on a piece of material, it was very difficult to have that same experience, that kind of unbroken discovery of whatever it was that interested you. And I think when I got older, one of my ambitions, and I think now probably the ambition of the company, is to provide people with exactly that same experience, to be able to say, I want to play the piano and I want to play anything and I want to have access to loads of different things and I want to have things curated for me and I want to explore and discover things. And that's what we're trying to give the next generation of musicians as well.
Right. So you were in music school and it dawned on you that you wanted to have access to more sheet music that you couldn't actually get to. Is that how you thought of the app idea?
I wish I'd made it to music school. Not even like the great American entrepreneurs, right? I've all been to university and then dropped out.
Right.
So didn't even manage to make it that far. So I didn't end up going to university.
Okay.
Because I was going to go, and then I had these kind of two paths of what it was to pick to do, and I picked to make the app instead. But yeah, I guess on some level, I've been making music. I was going to apply to go to do a composition degree, so it was essentially that.
So had you already had an experience on the tech side of things?
No, I hadn't. Not at all. I guess my interest was in music.
Okay. So take me to the minute where you were like, I'm going to, because you said you picked one or the other. Like, how do you pick that? Did you just wake up one morning and say, oh my gosh, I know what I'm doing. I'm going to create an app and it's this giant project that I have to get 50 publishers on. That's a big undertaking. We all know, I have so many questions about like how you get these old school publishers on board with going electronic and all of that stuff. So how did you say, this is what I'm doing? And then what was the first step to that?
I think the moment where you make the decision, I think you have to ask yourself, whenever you make these kind of life decisions, right, a set of contextual questions. Mm-hmm. And for me, the key thing was timing. So nkoda was founded, it will be 3 years ago this month. And at the time, the app ecosystem is 7 years old, right? And it hasn't actually changed that much from then to now. But it's very, very young. It's 10 years that we've had these effectively small supercomputers in our pockets.
Right.
And the effect that they've had has been so enormous, and the speed of iterative change has been so massive. And it was only logical to assume, right, that this new economic consumptive model, that of subscription, so that you can see in music, you could see it in films, and now is being, you can see it extending all the way out into really kind of disruptive businesses that do subscription services for food and things like that. Mm-hmm. That it's become the kind of economic model of the digital age. And I felt that that this project was going to happen, so that this service would exist, and I think it will exist regardless of whether nkoda exists or not. Of course, I think we will be. And I wanted to be part of that shift. I wanted to help contribute to that change with something that I really, really believed in. And, in your life, maybe you just don't really get that many opportunities to make that decision or to take that risk. And so I thought, well, if I don't do it now, I'm not going to do it. So that was really the motivation.
Okay. And then what did you do?
So I was really lucky. So I have a family friend who now is actually on the nkoda board, who's one of our directors, called John Sanderson. And he had some experience kind of helping fund startups, run them, sit on their boards.
Okay.
And he went to university with my mum. They were at Oxford together.
Okay.
And I went to him and I said, look, I have this idea. And he said, oh, well, you're sort of in luck because I've worked with one of the big publishing houses before, and let's go and see the CEO and chat to him. This is a piece of pure blind luck. Mm-hmm. And from there, John introduced me via a friend of his, Nick Silver, to Sundar, who's now our CTO, who was also really, really important because he's been doing this for 20 years. So he'd way more experience than me. And the first thing we did was build a file format that basically allowed us to secure and compress PDFs. And it's called a .kda file, and it's what powers the nkoda system today. And the combination of the introduction with this piece of technology that was very interesting for the publishing industry meant that we kind of went into the first phase of the business, which was this licensing.
Yes. Right, because that's the hardest part, right? Getting all these people who kind of essentially are the gatekeepers to the sheet music to say, okay, you can put this all out there. So what was that like when you first started talking to people? Were they open to it? Were they like, who's this young punk who wants to take our music and put it on a digital app? Like, what was their initial reaction?
Well, I think it's interesting. So my experience of publishing industry has actually been that it's full of people who are forward-looking and who want to find new ways to monetize their content, who see that there's a lot of lost value in the chain,
Yeah.
So the fact that there's a lot of piracy out there for their materials, the fact that that there's a lot of lost revenue, especially in digital, that probably could be recouped. So I have not found, in my experience, it wasn't that the conversations were necessarily negative about the model. I think particularly since you could look around you in the broader media ecosystem and see that a lot of money had been generated by subscription services. Mm-hmm. It was much more around how the logistics were going to work. So how it is that you fully secure content, how it is that you then go about marketing a product, why it is that they should spend the time to make those things available to you. And once we'd worked through that, I actually think that it was, and it has ended up being, I'm really grateful, a very positive relationship with them.
That's great.
So yeah, we've been very, very lucky to have and work with some absolutely amazing people in the different publishing houses. And then that's a big thing, luck, meeting the right people, talking to the right people first, understanding people's pain, right? And the areas that you can create value for your content suppliers as well as your users. And if you do that, then, you'd be surprised what you can get out of it.
Yeah, definitely. So wait, repeat that last part again, because I think that's really important what you just said. How you can create value for the people who are having an issue. So you didn't just go in there and say, this is what I want to do, and I need something from you. Like, you were essentially listening to. Did you have any idea? I mean, you went in there knowing what you wanted to create, but did you have an idea already or was this new to you that they were having these issues that you figured your product would help them resolve?
I mean, I think it's also about adapting. So yes, on some level, I had some idea because I'd experienced it myself. It's not news to any musician that there are spaces that they can get content illegally online. Everyone knows. And I knew that must be heard in the publishing industry and their business. Mm-hmm. But I think more than anything, one of the things about the a business proposition that you make towards anyone, whether it be a content supplier, an orchestra that you're working with, an artist that you want to do something with, whether it be in an individual musician's life with a venue, to constantly ask yourself where it is that their pain is, right? I'm talking, I mean, you can on broad levels, commercial, or brand pain or whatever it may be, and how it is that what it is that you have to offer can help solve that in a way that also creates value for you or for your business.
Yeah.
And so listening to them, actually what happened was the product expanded larger than it would have been if we had turned up and decided that we wanted to dictate what was going to happen, which would never have been effective anyway.
Right.
And I think listening is a really important part of doing partnership-based business, because that's how you're going to build the long-term relationships and get the access to the things that will create value for your business as well. So
that makes so much sense. Yeah, I love it. So then back to the sort of nitty-gritty of how you started it, because the startup world is sort of not really something that musicians necessarily know a whole lot about. We know that it has to be funded in order to. So did you find investors? Did you raise money to create the business?
Yeah, so we've just closed another round of funding actually, but we've had a number of rounds of funding, and it's all from actually up to now as individuals, and in this large round of funding we have some new investors that are institutional, but this is an area that we've been very, very lucky. I mean, when I speak to other entrepreneurs about the process of how it is that you raise money and build a shareholder base, I'd say that it's the most challenging area. Because especially young entrepreneurs tend not to know a huge amount about what it is that's put in front of them. So, when you get offered some money, there tends to be typically some kind of set of terms which are attached to that. And I think that lots of young entrepreneurs get used because they don't fully understand things. I was really lucky. We've been really lucky because in the management, we have people who've raised money for, $1 billion M&A transactions all the way through to small cap businesses. So we were protected from that. And we've also been really lucky in the sense that we have some amazing shareholders who, we can go to talk about things and who believe in the business and believe in the ideas as well as the commercial elements of it. And that's made the whole process of building the company so much easier and so much more fluent and fluid. And without them, of course, literally it wouldn't have been possible because capital is the lifeblood of young companies. But also from the point of view of the mentorship that they've given us as a company, kind of holistically, they've been really, really important.
So did you do it through people that you knew, and then those people knew other people that knew other people, or was there like an investing kind of firm, or like seriously?
There tends to.
I just don't know.
No, it's a whole planet, and why would you know? Like,
right.
Until you go into it, and it was one of the funny things. Like I think about, I walk around London now, and I've been in, I don't, maybe not hundreds, but definitely tens of buildings just to have these investment meetings, and you kind of begin to build kind of an alternate map of what the city's like because you'd have all these places you've never been to before, and it's in London, which is a city which is full of capital for large and small companies. There's lots of it. So there are lots of people that you meet, individuals, and often they would come through people who were already your shareholders who had told someone that they knew about it, who then wanted to invest.
Okay.
And then institutions you find as kind of part of an investment network. So, someone will have access to institutional size investors who you can then, present to. But I think probably over the course of raising money for nkoda, I've done 120 to 150 presentations.
Wow. Okay. So so there's situations where people are gathered into a room and you give a presentation, and then they have the opportunity to invest, essentially.
Yeah, I mean, it's generally a multi-stage process where you have an introduction, you have kind of conversations. I guess most people's understanding of investment is like Dragon's Den here in the UK or Shark Tank in the US, right? Like people think that this is what it's sort of like, but it's not. It tends not to be. Because lots of technology investors will see 1,000 to 2,000 companies a year. So you don't necessarily get a huge amount of time with them, and what they're interested in tends to be more kind of based on certain kind of criteria that they have for their investment.
How many rejections did you get?
Oh, I've done tons. You can't even begin to count. Like we've been very lucky in the sense that raising money for us has been something that we have been able to do, and that's a very hard thing for companies generally. But I mean, it becomes par for the course. The process of rejection when you start a young company is something that you will go through and you're going to have to deal with on many levels repeatedly all the time.
Yeah. I'm wondering how
do
this is related. Like, I think most people, I mean, there might be people out there who are interested in doing something sort of like this. And I know particularly there's at least one person that I know who's got a practice app. It's called Modacity. I'm giving him a plug here.
Good name.
Yeah, and it's like a practicing app. And I'm not sure if he went and I think it organizes your practice schedule and routine and things like that. And I'm not sure if he went through all of this, but there's not, I would say I mean, out of all the musicians I know, that's the only one I can think of who's done this besides you. And so, but I wonder if there are parallels to raising money for something like a nonprofit. Like if you're starting your own orchestra or your own, I don't know, school, camp, festival, something like that. Like, I wonder what the parallels are. If you could think of any, or
I mean, I would say that raising money in whatever context is down to a conversation which effectively is about balancing the return for one person against the so the return for the investor against the kind of the lifeblood potential for the investee. So if I was to ask myself how it is that I would raise money if I wanted to start an orchestra, I would probably go through a very similar process to what it is that we do when we raise money for a company, right? You identify who is in your bracket of investment. So, for example, when we started out and we were raising a 6-figure sum as opposed to a 7-figure sum, let's say, you're not going to go to Fidelity because Fidelity has, it has actually a VC arm full of really great people here in London, but we would never have been in their tax bracket, right? So that is the wrong place to look. So the first thing to identify who it is that's going to provide you with the funding and how it is that you build a book of investment which arrives you at the total that you think you need. Which you should always.
So you were asking too much or too little for Fidelity?
No, we would be asking. So we were just too small an investment to make any sense. It's just an example for a company of that size, right?
Right.
An investment
that makes
arm
sense.
of that size.
Okay.
Whereas if then maybe now it's different, but when we were much, much smaller.
So you're saying like if I need $500 for a concert, like that's a really small amount.
No, it's a good example though, actually.
But you wouldn't go to like the biggest bank in the city because they'd be like,
exactly.
Why this doesn't even make sense to me to give it to you. Like you're not thinking about how it makes sense for them to give it to you because it's about tax benefits and stuff to them, right?
Yeah, or just literally the manpower required to get someone to give you the $500 is at the point because of the way that their organization is structured not worth their time, which is totally valid, right? It might be that the time that I take to do the due diligence is more expensive than the investment I'm going to make, so it doesn't make economic sense. But say your $500 concert example is a good one. Like you have 5 friends who can give you $100, but you actually you have 10, but 3 of them aren't going to give it to you. 2 you're 50-50, and 5 you think are a decent shot. That's how you build an investment book. Is by doing that. Is by identifying.
Do that again, but slower.
So say you want your $500.
Yeah.
You know that each of your potential investors can give you 100. Let's say you identify 10 of your friends who each have $100. You reckon that 3 of them are a complete lost cause because they were never going to give you the money in the first place. 2 of them are a bit 50-50, and the other 5 you reckon are pretty safe bets.
Yeah.
One of them is probably going to fall off for some reason.
Just because math, right? Just because this is math. Like this is how you can count. You can kind of count on that mathematically that out of 10 people, maybe 3 will actually give you the money.
You just sort of plan, I guess. I mean, in investment, it's weird. Like you can be on a hot streak and things can start going well for you, or you can just go to lots and lots of meetings and get rejected again and again and again. But what I mean is it's to identify a base of people who are in the right capital depth for you. So $100 is the right kind of amount that you're looking for. So your friends can give you that, but it's not worth going to the big bank.
Right.
And then it's also about what the relative reward for them is putting in that money. And I think one of the things that arts organizations are probably going to have to change doing, particularly in Europe. I think in America there's a culture of philanthropy, which means it's slightly different. But building out structures that reward the people that provide them with their capital, because that is how an investment works, and that
Well,
idea of return is really important.
yeah, I think so. I think you're right. And it's less and less so in America where taxes are being changed all the time. So maybe it's not such a write-off anymore to donate $1,000. Like
Yeah,
you're only gonna see that benefit if you're donating over a certain amount. Like I think, I'm not sure if they did change that or if they will. I think they already did. And so like for people who give smaller donations to smaller organizations, like say you gave $1,000, you're only going to get that tax benefit if you've given 20,000. And so now the smaller people who they don't see the benefit anymore of doing that. So like that's a good thing to put forward. Like what can the organization do in terms of rewarding or making it an even exchange? Like maybe they get VIP
yeah,
experiences or
exactly, yeah,
something like
exactly.
that, right? So that makes sense. Like it's really great to think about what you can do for someone else instead of just what they can do for you. And I think that's the biggest like takeaway from this conversation, regardless of if, someone listening is going to create an app or not, that this is when you're going in to ask for something, that you have to think about what the other person's getting.
Yeah,
What,
absolutely.
so that's a great thing to come out of this conversation that I didn't quite plan on, which is awesome too. I love when that happens. So let's talk about the app a little bit more, because I know that people will be probably both excited and also have questions. Like one of the things I wonder about is, say you use the music on your app and you write in all your bowings, and is it stored there forever? Can you download it? Like there's like a fear, and I'm sure the fear can exist anywhere. Your computer could crash, your house could burn down, and your paper music could burn. But like how do you like safeguard that your writing, that your fingerings and bowings will be there all the time?
Well, so Encoder is a service, just like Spotify or like Apple Music or like Netflix. So the library that you have exists in the cloud. So you can store anything offline, which means that you can use it in any context inside the app.
Okay.
But the ecosystem is kind of self-contained, so things stay in that space. One of the things I would say about say storing your bowings, which stay with you, so as long as you have an account, everything is there forever. Is that they are very secure and they stay in the cloud, and unless the whole of Arizona burns down, where AWS is, which I don't think it will, those things will be there continuously. And there's a different kind of security. I get that the kind of the physicalization of the object gives us the sense of security.
Yeah.
But the digital is, in all ways, actually more permanent and more secure. So yeah, it doesn't disappear. It's not going to go anywhere. It'll be there on your account, and you'll have it for forever. So.
Okay. And then do you see people not using paper anymore because of your product, or you had said that maybe this could actually benefit the sheet music companies in other ways for their physical product, and I'm curious to see how you think it will.
So the first thing is that I think, we already exist in a hybrid economy for books.
Yeah.
So you already see people who use digital and people who use physical, and the two things, they overlap, right? People
Yeah.
use both. So for example, I'm about to go to Austria, as we just chatted about before we started recording, and I'm going to take my Kindle. But I have physical books at home, and I own actually, 200, 300, 400 scores. And it's music that's personal and important for me. But the point about Encoder is that it's an access business, right? So it's about providing anyone in the world, anywhere, with access to this music. And it is also a tool. So people will choose to have, sometimes they'll have physical paper to read their music, and sometimes they will have digital. I wouldn't be surprised at all to see in the next 3, 4, 5, 6 years, not whole orchestras using iPads, but single players using them, or sections using them, for example. And the kind of that transition happening very, very gradually, if at all, and in the end ending up in the same place that we do with Kindle, with a kind of hybrid economy, depending on what it is that you prefer. When it comes to physical sheet music, so this is what I think is interesting. So this is a kind of a thesis, let's say, which is borne out just looking at the effect of digital scale on other industries. So when you're in a competitive situation, right, trying to sell physical music, especially considering the illegal options and the piracy and whatever it is that you have, you're trying to create a product which is cheap enough that you can sell it and compete, but is also of a high enough quality that it offers a better alternative to, say, a printout from IMSLP for a non-copyright piece of music.
Right.
That's a difficult margin to strike, the Venn diagram of success for that, and because of that, it's not a super might not necessarily be a super profitable enterprise, because you're fighting against all these different alternatives. Becomes kind of a race to the bottom. But what we've seen in other industries where digital has kind of replaced the piracy and replaced the kind of very bottom level of access is that people begin to buy things. So I think, for example, that the people who use the beautiful high quality materials of some of our publishers, be it Boozy and Hawks or Baron Writer or Chester or Breitkopf or Recordi, Duran Salabert, Eschig, PWM, like these amazing kind of iconic names in publishing. There's no reason why they wouldn't want to own the things that they're looking at. So I think that it'll encourage and drive people to use those physical materials. And secondly, I think it will create, and actually we already see this with a partner here in the UK, Faber Music, who's already started, creating what are effectively kind of merchandise products. So you have these beautiful editions that are hardback and, cloth bound and have amazing, critical commentaries or notes, and they're signed by the composers, and that there are 100, 200, 300 of them, but they're, gorgeous and expensive, and they become collector's items because we want to own physical things, right? Mm-hmm. We want to have beautiful objects because humans are strange like that. So I think that is absolutely what will happen. So I think you'll see a growth in the physical because global distribution will bring the market. It'll pump money back into the system. And then I think you'll see this kind of boutique merchandising area, which is a highly profitable one, also becoming more prominent.
Will you partner with people and like, so it will be integrated into your app? Like if you want to buy the collector's version of what you're reading right now on your screen, click here kind of deal, or?
Well, I don't. It's not something that we've looked at right now, but I mean, I don't know what will happen in the future in terms of the product and the roadmap. I obviously on other services, merchandising is a big part of how it is that they kind of create value. So it's just something to think about for the future for us, I think.
That's great. So when you, as you were navigating this whole project, you had mentioned one person that you were introduced to through your mother. Did that person end up being like a mentor of sorts to you, or do you have like a business mentor that you collaborate with?
I've been really lucky in the sense that actually over the course of the process, the company, and I guess by extension then me as well, have had really important mentorships in all the different areas of the business. So, Sundar with the technology and the product is someone who had a lot of experience building technology, building systems, building things that people used. And as I talked to him about the things that I was hoping to achieve with the product, could point me in the direction of a lot of the experiences that he'd had. John, who was the guy that I mentioned earlier, of course, has gone on to play a kind of godfatherly role in the company. But, Peter Grimshaw, who's our director of music, who actually moved from Australia to London and to work with us, had been working with the publishers for 25, 30 years, building back-end systems and higher libraries, and actually created Symphonia, which is this it's a kind of portal where you can go to if you want to have access, if you want to order higher materials. And his knowledge was it's invaluable, and his relationships were invaluable. And Enrique Lopez, who's now on our board, as I mentioned earlier, is also he's an ex-investment banker, and he had a lot of experience building businesses. And you combine all of these things together, and what it is, it's not that just you get the mentorship from those people, which of course you do. Like you learn how they work and the way they work and what they're trying to achieve, and the way they think about kind of the next step and the best way to achieve the goals that the business has. But you also learn how they work and what it is that they do well and do badly. But really, that's mentorship that is for the whole business. It's not just for you.
Right.
And that's really what's been invaluable. And I've been very, very lucky, just personally, in the past 3 years, in all sorts of ways, to have had that, to have had the opportunities, to have met the people. And that's something that you can't buy. That it's just something that happens.
Yeah, well, it sounds really holistic, and especially because as you said, it's sort of a mentorship for the whole company as a whole, which I like that idea. And I'm sort of in my mind translating how this would transfer over to building a board for going back to the orchestra example. If you're building some kind of nonprofit, like how you seek out the people who you want to be on your board and what they bring to the table, because that's an interesting way of looking at it.
Yeah, I mean, I think in the end, the thing which will determine the success or the failure of an enterprise like that or like ours is the people. And finding the people who are willing and able to put themselves through the things that you have to do to get to the other side, and have the experience or the capacity or the qualities which fit your goals. I think that's the really key thing. Is a lot of it is to do with not necessarily wanting the shiniest thing, but wanting the most appropriate thing.
Right.
And that's not the same thing.
Yeah.
And focusing on people who are right for what it is that you need, even if they're not necessarily the people who you think you'd want.
Okay, that's interesting. What about the part of now you have this great product and you have to get it out in the world? You have the next problem, which is people need to find out about it and start using it. So that's the next. I mean, I'm sure you've probably already been doing a lot of marketing, but how did you go about beginning marketing and beginning letting people know about this product and that it exists in the world?
Well, marketing is kind of a mix of different things. I mean, it's not an area that I have a huge amount of experience in, but from what we've learned, it's about kind of blending different things. So doing social advertising, about putting money into paid search, doing PR and projects like this. Like this came about because the kind of person who leads PR and also does artist projects with us, Tom, got in touch with you because he listened to your podcast. And that happens in different ways. We had a lovely 2-3 minute program made about us by France Musique a couple of weeks ago. We had an article written about us in the Helsinki Son Mat, and we've had a fair amount of press coverage, which has happened organically. And then it's the things that you push yourself out there as well. And then, of course, we have the stuff that we're doing with the artist partnerships, which is a very important thing for us as a company. We work with some really amazing artists. We were really lucky to get some amazing quotes from Joyce DiDonato for the Apple feature and Simon Rattle as well. And we've got some really cool projects coming up with this fantastic young English saxophonist, Jess Gillum, this amazing Korean American violinist, Esther Yu. We have a kind of a holistic approach that we also want to bring the artists close to the musicians. And in doing that, we spread a lot of the word about nkoda as well. And if you kind of add all these things up together, that's what a kind of marketing strategy is. And it's only really 6-8 weeks old because, now nkoda is available on all platforms. And it's just starting this kind of big push to let the music community know that this thing exists, and that it can be used for all the different needs that they have.
It's great. It's great. So we'll definitely make sure there's a link in the show notes so people can check it out.
Yeah.
And it sounds fabulous. So what do you see for the future of, I mean, I know it's new and you're probably like, well, let's just do this right now. But what do you see for the future of nkoda, the future of your company? You're young and you probably have lots of other goals. I'm just curious about what.
Lots of bad ideas.
Really? Okay, yeah, so that's another question. First answer this question, then I have a question about bad ideas.
Oh, okay. So the first answer to your first question is I want to make, and we want to make, nkoda synonymous with the act of making music. So in the same way that when you open up your browser and you want to find something online, you go to Google, and if you want to buy something, you probably go to Amazon. And if you want to listen to music, you open up Apple Music, you open up Spotify. That is the kind of thing that we're aiming for with nkoda, which is that when you think, oh, I need to practice this, or oh, I need to teach this, or oh, I need to learn this, or oh, I need to play this, you think, oh, I'm going to go to nkoda.
Oh.
And I think that is the kind of the long-term goal for us. And it kind of it goes back to that core idea of empowering access through technology, and
Yeah,
that's really what we're sort of working towards.
that sounds great. So, and back to the ideas and the good ideas and the bad ideas. I guess my question really was, what advice do you have for people who want to do some kind of a big venture? Like this is a huge undertaking, you know. No one not very many people, obviously, because you're the one who's taking this on, wake up and say, "I want to put all the music in one
Yeah,
place." You know,
it's a
that's
bit nuts,
huge.
isn't it? It's true.
Yeah, it's great. So like, what advice do you have for people with big ideas, essentially?
So, far be it from me to tell anyone how it is that they should do things, but in my limited experience, the first thing is that so you are asking me this question probably because I was the first person who started this company. But in the end, it's villages that build products, right? It's villages, and then it's families and people who are willing to go through the work and the stress and the difficulty and the challenge every day together to get to an endpoint. And that's how it is that you make things happen. Whether that be like with us, our fantastic development team, whether it be our marketing and sales department, whether it be our musicology team, everyone is pulling collectively in one direction, and that is the key to success. So I'm privileged enough that I get to talk about this because I was the first person, but in the end we build those things together.
You built a team. So
Yeah, you
so
built a team.
and so your advice is to get a team.
Yeah, build a team, find people who you trust and believe in, because in the end the hardest thing about this process is just the relentlessness if you're really serious about succeeding, and the effect that it has on you physically, personally, professionally. You need to have people around you who can help pull their weight, pull the ship forward,
Yeah.
support you, and who you can support. And that's really, really important. And once you have those people, or while you're building those people, the second thing and the most important thing is even with all those people, if you don't have focus and clarity on what it is the exact next thing you have to do is, and why it is that you're doing that thing, you're going to struggle. So when we say, okay, we're going to do this thing, and I want to do it perfectly before I move on to the next thing, or I want to do it to a standard which allows me to move on. But if you allow yourself to look at the whole landscape, you're going to be overwhelmed by all the different steps that you have to take. And that's what will stop you moving forward.
Yeah.
And the last thing is just do stuff. Just go.
Just do
Don't
stuff.
wait.
And
Just do stuff.
do you find that making a deadline for things helps you?
Yeah, I mean, I think we've got to the point where our situation is so extreme that it probably is not that useful because we sort of have to do everything all the time. I
Right.
joke with our CTO that we've reached a point of pure agile where you don't have kind of a framework anymore. You just do. But there is a value in creating, and also unreasonable ones sometimes.
Yeah.
Just
Yeah.
things that are unachievable, because they will push you to surprise yourself when you do that. And I think one of the things about goal setting, whether it be time-based or whatever, the last sort of thing I would say, again, in my very limited experience, far be it from me to tell anyone how they should do things, but you'd be surprised when you push how willing the world is to give you a go. And what's possible when you just ask for things. Sometimes people will say no, and if you're willing to have that, you'll be amazed if you just keep going what you might get on the other side.
Right. That's great. God, so much great advice on this podcast. Thank you. Thank you for your unique insight on building a business. I mean, there's so much here that it's valuable, regardless of if someone's going to take, someone's going to build an app or create something tech worthy or just something musical or some kind of endeavor, which
Well, I hope so.
yeah, I
I hope
definitely
so.
do. And I think everyone should consider some kind of endeavor, regardless of what it is, big or small, just because it keeps you moving forward as opposed to waiting for somebody to give you an opportunity. And so that's why this podcast exists, but also, everything that you said, I think can further other people's, ideas. So I appreciate it.
No, thanks for having me, Tracy. Well, thanks to Tom Thanks to Tom for setting it up.
Yeah, thanks, Tom.
He's shaking his head. It's not true. He's far away. He's behind glass. I don't think can he hear me? Yeah, he can hear me.
Well, have a great trip to Vienna today. We'll all be thinking about the amazing coffees and pastries you'll be eating as we hang out over here across the pond.
I don't know what to say about that. I apologize, Tracy, but it is true.
It is true. And I'll have a link there available in the show notes so people can check out nkoda for themselves. Right. And so it's available now, right?
Yeah, across all platforms, all devices. You can go to your friendly neighborhood app store, iOS, Android, Mac, PC, or you can just go to www.nkoda.com and you can go from there and learn some more as well. Great. And you're on Instagram and Facebook, I assume. At nkoda music on Instagram and at nkoda on Twitter. Okay. And on Instagram particularly, we've got all the good product announcements, the stuff with the artists. So definitely go and follow us, and you'll find all the new stuff coming. It's all there. Fabulous. Links in the show notes. Thank you so much, Lorenzo. Have a great trip. Tracy.